Good afternoon. I'm Elise Bullock, the Assistant Director here at the Office of Small Business Programs. And today we have Ms. Robin Nickles from the Office of the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy Intelligence and Security Office. Ms. Robin Nickles joined the Office of the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy Intelligence and Security Program Protection Branch on February 1st, 2021. Ms. Nickles serves as the Senior Industrial Security Program Manager for the Department of the Navy. She is responsible for developing, promulgating DON policy and integrates the policy with other security programs to ensure unclassified, controlled unclassified, and classified information is properly protected while processed by cleared contractors under the National Industrial Security Program. She provides guidance in one or more security disciplines within the broad area of security enterprise to include policy development, policy integration and implementation, program planning, and oversight and training. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Nickles, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm really excited. And thank you to you and your team for setting this up. So good afternoon. My name is Robin Nickles, and I'm the Industrial Security Program Manager in the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy Intelligence and Security Office. I know that's a mouthful, so we'll refer to DOS and INS. For those of you who are not familiar, the Office of the Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy for Intelligence and Security advises and assists the Secretary of the Navy and the Undersecretary of the Navy on matters such as intelligence responsibility, counterintelligence, and special operations. The DOS and INS, Mr. Victor Manila, serves as the Department of the Navy's Security Executive, Senior Agency Official, and Lead for the Department of the Navy Security Enterprise. I work specifically in the Security Directorate under Mr. Andrew Jones, who is the Senior Security Director, and in the Program Protection Branch for Ms. Kate Fuster. So a little bit about myself. I served actually in the United States Navy for 8 years on several different aviation platforms. I served on the USS Harry S. Truman for 2 wartime deployments. After my enlistment, I settled in industry for several years before moving back to the Department of Defense with the Defense Security Service, which is now known as the Defense and Counterintelligence Security Agency. I served in several positions at DCSA, and most notably my Senior Industrial Security Specialist position and my Field Office Chief position. As a field office chief, I was responsible for over 700 cleared facilities within my area of responsibility. After 15 years, I decided to make the move back to my roots in the Department of Defense with the Department of the Navy. So a little bit about me. So over the next 60 minutes, my goal is to answer your questions on how do I get a facility clearance and what are those requirements. I'll provide you with a little bit of an overview of industrial security, vetting and security clearance processes, and how your business can prepare for a facility clearance. Okay, slides. Great, if you could move to the next. So what is the National Industrial Security Program? The National Industrial Security Program was established by Executive Order 12829 to ensure that U.S. cleared industry safeguards classified information within their possession. DoD is considered the federal executive agency, and they are responsible for providing and issuing guidance on 32 CFR Part 17, which provides guidance and direction to cleared industry. They also have operational oversight of all cleared contractors. Internally, DoD constructs policy and issues, and for those non-DoD agencies underneath the industrial security agreements with the Department of Defense. Specifically, the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency is named the DoD Cognizant Security Office, which has been delegated that authority from the Secretary of Defense. And DCSA administers and conducts oversight of the National Industrial Security Program on behalf of DoD and 35 other agencies in which those agencies have industrial security agreements. DCSA is also responsible for processing companies for facility clearances and for personnel security clearances. Next slide. So I get questions probably every single day on, Robin, what is a NISP versus non-NISP contractor? So I'm going to explain to you a little bit about what a NISP contractor is and what a non-NISP contractor is. So the National Industrial Security Program. So as we look at determining security requirements for a contract, we're going to look at several things. And you can see that I've highlighted both of these examples because both are very important to distinguish between what is a NISP contract and what is a non-NISP contract. So if you see the first bullet there, you will see that the termination, a security determination to access classified information. So when there's actual knowledge of classified information and it is required in the performance of your duties, you will require a facility clearance. Part of that, if you look a little bit deeper into that first bullet, is not only when we look at facility clearances and the performance of what you will be doing, we also have to look at the type of environment you're in. So for example, if you are sitting in an operations center where perhaps you're not picking up documents every day. However, you are in a physical environment which precludes you from hearing classified information. You have visible access to classified information, and you are physically sitting in a space which requires a classified environment, then it would be necessary for you to have a facility clearance. When we talk about non-NISP contractors, we're looking at instances where would not have access to classified information. So DCSA's authorities are under the National Industrial Security Program, which is access to classified information. So if there's no access of classified information within a contract, DCSA would not fund any of those investigations, personal security investigations, nor would they move towards a sponsorship process, meaning they wouldn't sponsor, they would not sponsor or process a company for facility clearances. So a good example there is the GCA, the government contracting activity, would be responsible for any enhanced vetting that would need to happen in conjunction with the contract. So as we look at a non-NISP contractor, we're looking at things, network system administrator, access to government installations or facilities, and issuance of common access cards, better known as a CAC card. So for example, within the Department of the Navy, I often get asked questions, hey, I have a company, they're going to work on a contract. They don't have access to classified information. However, they need access to our installation. And oh, by the way, they have enhanced capabilities within our IT system. So they may be a help desk person, password administrator, things of that nature. These would not be considered a NISP contractor because they are not accessing classified information. And again, DCSA would not fund that, those personal security investigations, those personal vetting investigations, and that would be incumbent on the government customer to do those. Next slide, please. So where does that land us? How does this all start? So background investigations, clearances versus vetting. So when we talk about if we need a clearance or we need vetting, these are some of the bullet points that I want you to look at. So everything will start with a background investigation. So if you need a personal vetting requirement, we're still going to get a background investigation. It's just not necessarily that you will get a security clearance. A security clearance also requires a background investigation. So as we look at this list, you can see that background investigations are conducted for many things: for suitability for government employment, for fitness for contractors working on a government contract, again, eligibility to serve in national security sensitive positions, and then there are a number of other parameters there that you can see. So what I want to hone into is on the next two bullets there. So if the contract does not require access to classified information, the government customer would be responsible for initiating the background investigation. So to be known, if it is a non-NISP contract, i.e., we would not have access to classified information, the contractor itself would actually not have A, the authority, and B, the ability to initiate any of those background investigations. So if a contractor does require access to classified information, the facility security officer would be responsible for this action. So if you are not a cleared company as of yet, and you are going to be sponsored into this process, then the government customer would provide a sponsorship package to DCSA, and DCSA would act as your facility security officer and initiate your background investigations until such time that you are cleared, and you can do that for the folks in your company that need to be cleared. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of words on this page, but they're all very important words. And I've highlighted some of the important pieces here. So as we talk about clearance and we talk about vetting, and we've just discussed background investigations, these are some of the requirements that we're going to be looking at. So if you are a non-NISP contractor, meaning you will not have access to classified information, these are some of the background investigations or some of the position descriptions that might fit you. So as we look at a non-sensitive, low-risk position, these are going to be positions that are not involved in public trust and don't have a national security nexus. So for example, these would be some of these positions that need a minimum background investigation to be completed. So you could just be a general user on an IT system, which requires some level of vetting, which could be at a tier 1 level. You may have to have access to a federal facility, and so in which case that you would be vetted at a tier 1 as well. As we move on and look at some of the other vetting parameters here, we look at public trust. So public trust could be to a high or moderate position. They could require actually a variety of
Excuse me, Robin. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We have one question that wanted clarification. Since government customer means government agency, correct?
Yes. So if the sponsorship is coming from your government customer, it'll be the customer at that agency, or potentially, in the context of a non-NISP contractor, that would be the government, yes, or the government agency, the contracting officer, etc. If it is a cleared entity, it could either be the government customer or it could be the prime contractor, just depending on which, if we're talking about NISP or non-NISP. Is that helpful?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So let's see. Public trust, sorry. Moderate or high risk positions does not involve national security or to have access to classified information. However, a higher level of background investigation or vetting, if you will, would be required. So there are several different types here. I don't want to you too much. I know that this is my bailiwick, and I love to talk about industrial security. I can talk all day, but don't want to bore you into submission. So you can see there in the bullet points that there's a couple different tiers that you're looking at for that particular position, the public trust. It could be a tier 2 or a tier 4. And some examples of a higher level of vetting, which you would see more so on the classified side, T3 or T5, because of the position that you would be holding, i.e. if, like I stated before, if it was an IT position, that you would be an IT administrator, not necessarily accessing classified information. However, you would have the keys to the kingdom, if you will. That would require a higher level of vetting, possibly at the T3 or T5 level. So while your vetting would be conducted, or your background investigation would be based on a T3 or tier 5, if you're a non-NISP contractor, that does not provide you access to classified information. It just provides you a more stringent background investigation. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's the juicy stuff. For clearance information, so if you are a NISP contractor, so we just talked about 2 particular items that were non-NISP related. We're looking at a NISP contractor, you're looking at a national security position. So this position requires access to classified information, and you're going to be doing that in the performance of your duty. And these investigations are going to be at the T3 or T5 level. So if you have confidential, secret, top secret, T3, you're going at the secret level, top secret, you're going to be at the T5 level. And again, these would be positions in which that you would be accessing classified information. It is to note at the T3 level, for a secret level clearance, this investigation does not require a subject interview. So a background investigator would not come out and interview you. However, at the top secret level, at the tier 5 level, this would require a subject interview. Next slide. Okay, so all this to say, to get you ready for a facility clearance, we've talked about what really the industrial security program is, what a NISP contractor is, what a non-NISP contractor is, some of the vetting requirements, and so what really is a facility clearance. So per the 32 CFR Part 117, which is the National Industrial Security Program Manual, which has now been created into a federal rule, defines a facility clearance as an administrative determination from a national security standpoint that your company is eligible to work on and access classified information. The Defense Counterintelligence Security Agency, DCSA, would be the cognizant security office to perform this action. Now, the requirements based on a facility clearance are going to be what is outlined in your performance work statement and your statement of work. So this is what is going to be your cue as to, am I accessing classified information or am I not accessing classified information? So all of that should be outlined in the PWS and the SOW. So when you see that in your work statement and you're looking and you're working with your government customer, this is going to be your legitimate need to acquire a facility clearance. So if you are working directly with a government customer, the customer would sponsor the facility clearance. And if you are working with a prime contractor, the prime contractor would sponsor the facility clearance. So the performance work statement and the statement are going to be very key to the requirement for a facility clearance. So a lot of times I get asked to, what really is a classified contract? Is it classified as I can't talk about it? Is the document itself classified? What do you really mean by a classified contract? So a classified contract in the general sense does mean you are being issued a contract in which the contractor has access to classified information in the performance of their duties. So you will receive a DD Form 254, which outlines your security requirements, the requirement for the FCL, or any other security requirements that are outlined in your performance work statement and the statement of work. I'm not going to say that that document will or will not be classified, because in some instances, the document itself can be classified. And in some instances, the document is actually an unclassified document relaying the security requirements to you. Next slide. And here's some additional facts about security clearances. So I hear questions all the time. What does this really mean? How do I pay for this? Do I need a facility clearance to bid on a contract? So you do not need a facility clearance to bid on a contract. Most oftentimes, the requirement to get a facility clearance is the legitimate need to access classified information and the ability to obtain a facility clearance and maintain that facility clearance. There could be certain situations where that may be the case. However, in general terms, you do not need a facility clearance to bid on a contract, a classified contract. A lot of times people are saying, what do you really mean by a facility clearance? Is it actually for this particular building? And as we discussed earlier, a facility clearance is an administrative determination. And what it's doing is looking at the whole of company, how your company is organized. And it looks at some of your business documentation to look again at the business entity. So there are physical locations that can be cleared, because if you are in a company that has several different locations or different subsidiaries, so for example, if I have Robin Nickel Inc. and I decide to create a subsidiary of Robin I Nickel Inc., doesn't necessarily mean because I own that same company and similar company names that company is cleared as well. So I hope that provides some clarity on the physical office structure. So again, there's no cost to you as the contractor for funding a facility clearance. Again, it is a legitimate need for you to access classified information, and your government customer or your prime contractor will sponsor you for that, and the government funds those processes as well as the personal security process. Let's see. Oh, here's a good one too. A contractor still must have a facility clearance, even if they do not access classified material at their facility. So we do see that quite often. There are many small businesses and many companies out there that do not access classified information at their facility. They're most notably referred to as non-possessing facilities. However, because they spend most of their time on the government site accessing classified information, it's important that the facility itself, the company itself, is properly vetted to ensure that they meet the national security requirements. Next slide. Okay, to the good stuff. How do you prepare for a facility clearance? How do you get a facility clearance? What are some of the things that you need to acquire a facility clearance? And of course, someone's at the door, folks. It's either the dog barking or somebody at the door. So what do you need when you're awarding a classified contract? So again, it has to be a legitimate need to access classified information. So the government customer should issue the DD-254, or the prime contractor should issue a DD-254, which would provide you the legitimate need for that. So as you're going to go through the process, what things that you need to look for and that you need to be prepared for when you go through the sponsorship process. Make sure that you understand what your company's structure is. So how is your company organized? For example, are you a corporation? Are you a joint venture? Are you a sole proprietor? So you need to understand what your company looks like and the background information that pertains to that. So when you're looking at that structure, you want to make sure that you have the proper documentation that backs that up. So any articles of incorporation, things of that nature. Also, you want to look at who your key management personnel are in your facility. What does that mean? That means who are the folks in your facility or in your company that can bind the company, that can make decisions for the company, can influence if you're going to work on contracts or you're not going to work on contracts. And those responsibilities are outlined in your paperwork or your joint venture agreement or whatever business documentation that you have. Because DCSA is going to look at that in the processing of your facility clearance and advise you that, hey, we looked at your business documentation, and as per your documentation, these certain people need to be cleared in connection with the facility clearance. So when you're looking at your business documentation, so if you have a CEO that runs the company, that person would bind the company. The president may not necessarily have that authority. However, if the CEO outlines in the company paperwork that he can act on behalf of the CEO, that is somebody that would be considered a key management personnel. Additionally, the FSO, the Facility Security Officer, and then your Insider Threat Security Officer will be part of your key management personnel. So very important to take a good look at how your company is organized and who those key players in your company are. Also, you want to look at if there's any foreign ownership control or influence within your company. So if you have foreign investors, if you have folks who are not U.S. citizens that sit on your board, you want to understand the level of ownership, control, or influence that they have within your company. So as you're looking at this process and you're getting ready through this process, you need to start looking at that paperwork that will help you get through the process in a very smooth way. So we talked a little bit about the documentation that you need. So here are, a couple more bullets there to get you started on, what kind of documentation you want to be looking at. So we talked about your bylaws, your articles of incorporation, business license. If you're a DBA doing business as, you want to make sure that you have all that documentation in place, as well as there'll be some documents provided to you that you will need to fill out, which is the SF-328, which is the Certificate of Foreign Interest. Again, very important because this is going to determine if you have any foreign ownership, control, or influence. I'm not going to say that this is, if you have that, there's no way you're going to get a facility clearance. That's not the case. DCSA will determine what level of foreign ownership, control, and influence you have. And if it's something that can be mitigated, they're going to work with you on some mitigation measures with that. You're also going to download or be provided a DD Form 441. This is your security agreement with the government, basically saying that you will abide by the National Industrial Security Program and that you will be subject to security reviews and things of that nature. Again, with your corporate paperwork, you want to make sure that if you have board meeting minutes, that you include that. Oftentimes in a board meeting, there might be decisions on changing personnel that are in key positions, ownership, mergers, acquisitions, things of that nature. So all very important in the grand scheme of things. And also have a current organizational chart, particularly if you have a parent or subsidiary. So we want to make sure that there is a clear distinction of what your company structure organization looks like. Next slide, please. So facility clearance process. This is kind of what you're going to get yourself into if you get a facility clearance. This is your facility clearance process. So if you see at the top, the government contracting activity or cleared contractor sponsors or prime contractor is going to sponsor you for a facility clearance. So the first step is, again, the sponsorship, and that sponsorship package will include the DD-254, It will include a justification as why you need a facility clearance, and that will be issued to DCSA, and DCSA will go to the next step there where you see review and triage. They're going to look at all the paperwork. They're going to make sure that you have updated your clearance paper, or excuse me, you have updated the information they're asking for, like we just talked about. I will say there's one thing that I did leave out. So not only are you looking at your company organization and your structure and things of that nature, your KMP, your key management personnel, will be processed for personal security clearances concurrent to the entity vetting process, which is the facility clearance process. So if you are someone that has moved 50 times in the last 10 years, or if you've done a ton of foreign travel, you're the world traveler, make sure you have that paperwork in front of you, because as you fill out some of the security paperwork, it's going to ask you some of those things. So be prepared. So on the front end, you want to make sure that you have all this paperwork ready. So again, you can make that smooth transition into the process. So once all that paperwork has been considered and triaged, it's going to move through the process. So DCSA is going to analyze there to see if there are any indicators, or is there any risk. They're going to look at determining what that risk may be and how they can mitigate it, and how they can help you mitigate it. So this can be in form of many, many different things. So I won't go too much into that because that can really get into the weeds. And I have provided some links at the end of this slide that will be very helpful for you to do some further reading into some of those mitigations that you may have to do. It's not all encompassing, and sometimes it's very easy and you may not require any mitigations. So they're going to look at that through the process. So once everything has been triaged, there's determined there's risk, there's no risk, there's determined there's mitigation or no mitigation, they're going to look at the personal security clearances if they've been properly adjudicated for the key management personnel. And once the decision has been made, then DCSA will make the adjudicated determination to grant the facility clearance or not grant the facility clearance. And then from there, DCSA will be a primary force for the rest of your contract cycle, or if you continue to get more classified contracts, because DCSA, again, has been delegated by the Secretary of Defense as the Cognizant Security Office. So they are going to conduct the oversight to ensure that you, as a small business or a business in the facility clearance, once you've acquired that facility clearance under the National Industrial Security Program, are adhering to those requirements, i.e., you have built a security program, which DCSA is going to help you to do, and there's lots of information provided to get you there. And then they are going to continuously monitor your facility clearance. So they're going to ensure that you do have a classified contract. If your classified contract ends and you no longer have a requirement, they will or could possibly administratively terminate your facility clearance. This is not a punitive measure. However, we want to make sure that folks in the National Industrial Security Program that possess a facility clearance have the need to access, because the oversight and the continuous monitoring is a very heavy lift, not only for you, but for DCSA and the government customer. So if you get to a point where you don't have a classified contract anymore, and there's nothing in your future, please be prepared for the possibility that your facility clearance could be terminated. So there are factors in there, again, not punitive in nature. I will say, coming from DCSA, I will say that if you're out of the program for a year, let's say a year, you get another classified contract and you have to be responsored, and you've had no changes in your company, you have the same people there, there's no acquisitions, there are no mergers, or facility clearance process may go a little bit quicker because you've had no changes in your process and in your structure. So that is a possibility, not a promise. I can't talk about timelines because they're not my timelines to talk about. That is a facility clearance process, how they do their entity vetting at DCSA. Again, they are charged with that process. But I will tell you, it is a collective process. So the sponsor, them getting the paperwork in that's complete and accurate and timely, and then incumbent on you, on the small business, to ensure that your paperwork is accurate, complete, and timely, and then going to DCSA so they can accurately assess and ensure that you have the complete paperwork to go through the process is very important. So I think that ends the facility clearance process itself, what you're going to get yourself into once you're into the program. So I will hit the next slide, please. Okay, so I've provided a number of links here for you. So I will say most of these, I think, if not all of them, are from the DCSA website or the CDSC, the Center for Development of Security Excellence, to help you maneuver yourself through this process. So that top one, facility clearances, is very helpful. You are going to see that there's a facility security handbook. It is going to walk you through the process. It's going to give you a roadmap. It is going to define what your company's structure is and what paperwork that you would need to have to complete the process. It will also talk about the entity vetting, clearances, and foci. That's the next bullet there. The foci will go more into what foreign ownership control and influence is, how you can look at that, what paperwork you may need to do. So if you have any affirmative answers to your SF 328 foreign ownership, the certificate pertaining to foreign ownership control and influence, it'll give you some background as to what information you may need to provide for more backup information to your affirmative answers. Also, it will give you, I also have on there the preparing a DD-254, which is very important. Not only should you know how to prepare a DD-254 in the event that you sponsor someone, but you should be able to read a DD-254 and understand their requirements. There's some in there. So FSO's role in the NISP. So if you want to take a look at that before or as you know that you're going through the process, it's very helpful. It's going to tell you what your roles and responsibilities are, how to create a security program, things of that nature. So lots of different things there for you to look at. There is, DCSA has done a great job putting a little small business guide together that will be very helpful in the process for you to look at, maybe answer some more questions. So all this will be available to you. And I definitely encourage you going to these websites and taking a looking at the information, as it will help you ease into the process. And I will say some of the best practices I've seen from being at DCSA and helping small businesses is the more preparation you can do beforehand, a better understanding you will have through the process. I also encourage, if a prime contractor is sponsoring you, create that mentorship with them. Get yourself into forums that you are networking with other facility security officers so you can understand the process a little bit and the requirements, because that will not only help you, but it will help your program going forward. Next slide. So questions, that's all I have. Thank you for being an outstanding audience. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I hope this has been value added for you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Nickles. Yes, we do have a few questions here for you. One of the first questions we have, let's scroll up a little bit. How does a non-NIST contractor gain access to classified opportunities?
So if you go back to, let's see what slide it was. sorry, I can't pinpoint the slide. So a non-NISP contractor, how do you get access to classified opportunities? Well, I think that's more for the small business office, to be honest with you, or to whatever contractor or contracting agency that you're working with. So I don't necessarily put out contracts. So if you are looking at business with the government, so if you're, doing, if solicitations come out, looking at solicitations and looking at the requirements that are in the solicitations. So I can't just say, hey, go out to this company or this, because I don't know particularly what your skill set is. And as a government person, I can't recommend go to this company per se because you have this skill set. So I think, to be honest with you, that's more of a contracting question. You'd have to look at what the requirements of the contractor, at what the contract is, to determine if there's a requirement for you to get into the classified arena.
Great, thank you. The next one too is trying to figure out how much does it cost a contractor to fund a clearance, secret versus a top secret?
So as I said in one of the slides, that a contractor does not pay for a facility clearance or a personal security clearance. So once the government customer or the prime contractor has sponsored you for a clearance, the onus is on the government. So the government will fund the personal security process.
Right, thank you. Okay, is there a small business liaison for service-disabled veteran-owned small business that can help assist us in getting a facility clearance that we are in transportation sector? So that goes back to the contractor on that one. So you have to talk to your contract specialist and or whatever the solicitation that comes out on that, who has the requirement.
Yeah.
Please discuss CMM security levels and the type of clearance, if any, required for each.
So I am not in a position to discuss CMMC at length. Again, I think it depends on your contract, what language is in your contract, what FARs and DFAR clauses is in your contract. So that is something that I'd have to research a little bit more. There are requirements, I know, on certain contracts, classified and unclassified, for things like the NIST 800-171 requirements, which is tied into the CMC. So that's something that I'd have to take away and do a little bit more research on.
Okay, great. The next question talks a little bit more, sort of like to the security facilities clearance for the contractor, but I guess they're looking for more, like if there's a strategy or something that you can provide when they're trying to access a facility clearance on our contractors. There's any strategies, because they're asking like how do we go about that if we do not have a facility clearance? However, can we meet the performance requirement outside of this? Can you share some strategies and how you to respond to facility clearance at the proposal stage? I know, like you said, that's more or less the contractor. With contract specialists, you would have to reach out to them based on the requirements that's in the proposal on that one.
Right. So if there's a requirement for it, I mean, I would say your again, can't talk to your skill set as well. So, the company could have very specific skills. So it is on the contract side. And again, you don't have to have a facility clearance to bid on a contractor or, respond to a solicitation. It's your ability to obtain that facility clearance and to maintain it. So I think really is, do you meet the requirement of the contract? And if you do, and the solicitation is awarded, your best strategy is to kind of look at some of those links that I gave you, and then put together your paperwork. So again, you go through the ease of the process. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. So another question here is, when another company sponsors you for a facility clearance, what is the requirement for the sponsoring company and the company being sponsored as far as the number of FTEs to be allotted for the company to be sponsored?
So if the prime contract, I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Sure. When another company sponsors you for a facility clearance, what is the requirement for the sponsoring company and the company being sponsored as far as the number of FTEs to be allotted to the company being sponsored?
Okay, so the prime contractor would have the responsibility just like the government customer in certain terms. So if a prime contractor has the contract and they see that you have a particular skill set and they have subbed down that contract to you and you do not have the facility clearance, then they would do the same thing. They would do the sponsorship package. They would put together the justification. They would put together the DD-254 and they would submit that information to DCSA. As far as the FTEs involved in the contract, most notably would have to be the KMP because they have to be cleared in connection with the facility clearance, so those key management personnel. But that is more of a contracting question in terms of how many FTEs would be on the contract.
Okay, great. Okay, so trying to get to my questions here. Okay, so the next question is says, okay, I'm trying to go back. Okay. What happens if an RFP states that a facility clearance must be in place at the time of proposal submission? And what if they say no or disqualify you based on the facility clearance at the time of proposal submission?
So I think that's a takeaway, to be honest, because I can't speak to what those particular requirements are. I don't know if that would something at the higher level, particularly maybe it's a SAP or SCI. There could be provisions at the solicitation level for a facility clearance, but again, that would have to be outlined in the performance work statement or the statement of work.
Okay. And I guess this also follow on the next question. It says, although you don't need a security facility clearance to bid, but you may need one to see the solicitation documents. Do you know how that is addressed?
So that you would work out particularly with the government customer. So I probably would not get involved in that process. Again, it just depends on what the requirement is, what they want you to look at. And in some cases, folks may already have a personal security clearance, but they do not have a facility clearance. So I've seen where customers have allowed a contractor to come on their site, view the material, and then be able to provide the solicitation or proposal based on that at the unclass level.
Okay, great. Okay, the one that has a question about the time period of does it take to the process to get a facility clearance, and what are some of the reasons people get rejected?
So again, not my process. That is a DCSA process. However, coming from there are numerous factors, right? So we have to make sure if it's a government sponsorship that we are providing an accurate and timely sponsorship package to DCSA. The contractor needs to ensure that they have all the applicable paperwork, and that's done in a timely manner. So there are those factors. And then those timelines too are incumbent on DCSA. And those timelines are also incumbent on the KMPs that are going through their personal security process. So we never know what's in people's background, right? So right now, I think timelines for a secret or a top secret personal security clearance, I think, are average between 54 and 94 days. I could be off on that, maybe 180 days. But again, I can't really dictate timelines. Reasons for rejections in the initial process: not having the accurate paperwork, not having a legitimate need. I think there are a few others, and apologies, they're not coming forward. I should have thought that a little bit more. But again, it's more of a time factor. You want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row as well. So I would say those are a few things, and probably could dig out a few more in the aftermath.
Okay, another question here. Are security clearances grandfathered for a period of time after leaving active military duty or working in a clear position for a government contractor?
I think that you would need to elaborate on what grandfathered means. So if you are out of, there are many factors. So there has been a memo that was put out that says clearances don't expire. However, if you are active duty and you've been out of access for 24 months, then you're going to have to go through an initial investigation again, because we don't know what happens in 2 years, right? We don't know if you've had some issues, or if you've done some foreign travel, if you've gotten married, or things of that nature. So those are things that are factored into that clearance process.
Okay, let's see here. I think you pretty much answered a lot of the questions that came up that are listed here. Let me see. But this one, I guess this would also go back to the contractor. It just asks, would a janitorial landscaping and language translation service need a security facility clearance for those type positions?
I would say, again, would have to be based on what the requirement of the statement of work is. And some places, depending on where you are, they may require that. So typically we don't see janitorial services cleared. However, it's not uncommon that they are, again, depending on the environment in which they're working in.
Okay, great. Okay, another question. Is there an appeal process if you are denied a specific clearance?
A personal security clearance or a facility clearance?
I would think a facility clearance.
So I cannot answer the question on a facility clearance. When I left DCSA, it wasn't necessarily a appeals process for that, because if you don't have the requirement, if there's no requirement for you to access classified information, you would have an administrative termination. If there were issues at your facility, maybe you had some unmitigated problems there and you did not fix them, they could potentially revoke a facility clearance. But I don't have insight into what an appeals process would be like that from an entity vetting piece. However, from a personal security piece, there are appeals avenues. However, I can't talk about that process in depth. There are a number of steps that you would have to take to get to that process.
Okay, another question. It's a little long, but I'm going to shorten it a little bit. Basically, this question is asking, since a lot of the solicitations are calls for facility clearance and that they normally can't bid because they don't have one, is there a way they can apply if they self-sponsor themselves in order to get a facility clearance so they can bid on contracts that are where the solicitations are on the street?
So no, a company cannot sponsor themselves for a facility clearance. There has to be a sponsor in place, i.e. the government customer or prime contractor. Like I said, most solicitations, you do not need a facility clearance to bid on a contract. So that just might be a follow-up question for the contracts folks, or whoever's providing the solicitation, as maybe ask for clarity. Is the requirement really that I need a facility clearance to bid on this, or is the requirement once it's awarded that I obtain and maintain a facility clearance? I think that's an important piece to go back to your contracts folks with.
Okay, great. Okay, the next question is, okay, can going through a PSIA program help in getting a facility and security clearances?
I don't know what a PSI is.
Yeah,
PSI.
a PISA. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Again, it's based on a requirement. So if there's a legitimate need to access classified information, the sponsorship would have to be in place.
Okay. There was one question, if there's a small business liaison that can help with getting some assistance, if they have questions.
So, I mean, you could go through your small business office, and then I've provided some links, and then through the small business office, whatever agency, you know, they could absolutely reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let me see. I see this, trying to get one last question in before we wrap up for today. See, a lot of these are going back to the contracting office that has the requirement to put the solicitation out on the street. So I'm trying to get a good one that you can respond to. I think a lot of them are pretty much the same, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, so this one. Okay, the PISA is Provisional Industrial Security Approval. So I'm not.
You know what? I'm actually not familiar with that term, unless it's coined as something else.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I can look into that and see what what we can come up with. But I've not heard that term before.
Okay. Well, that's going to conclude our Q&A for today. And I want to thank you, Ms. Nickles, for taking the time for spending today with us and have going over the facility clearances having a facilities clearance webinar today. And I would like to thank all the participants for joining us today, and know that we are committed to maintaining a strong connection with our small business community, delivering impactful knowledge and resources that support your growth and collaboration with the Department of the Navy. Remember, small businesses are the driving force for innovation, and through these webinars, we're excited to engage with both our longstanding and new partners alike. You can catch up on our previous sessions by visiting the outreach and past events section on our website, or tuning into our YouTube channel. For more resources, our website is www.secnav.navy.mil/small business. Has everything you need, from OSBP operation plans to detail how to engage with us, including our long-range acquisition estimates. Don't miss out on any updates. Sign up for our newsletter on our website, and for the latest news and events, make sure to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, which is now, I guess, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Again, thank you for spending your part of your day with us. Your feedback fuels our content. So if there's a topic you're itching to learn more about, drop us a line at osbp.pao@navy.mil. Look forward to the recording of this session and the presentation materials on our website by next week. Until the next webinar, stay engaged and inspired. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.